this seminar. My name is Mauro Cherubini. I work for the Department of Information System. It's my great pleasure to present Martin Ortlieb, who is going to give this seminar today. Martin, we have worked together at Google a few years back. Martin is a user experience researcher. Up until 2016, I mean, he led basically the user-facing privacy group at Google. Then he left the company for a couple of years, working for Steelcase in Germany. And then recently he moved back and is working for Google again in Turkey. And Martin has a PhD from the social anthropology. So he is an anthropologist by training, and from the University of Manchester. And then you will see that particular approach in his work that has enriched his contributions in so many ways. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll leave you the floor.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I tend to speak fast, so if I speak too fast, please slow down. It's okay. Just a shout out, because I have lots of things to say. If I cut a few things out, but if it's too fast, do let me know. So what I want to present to you guys today are some insights from research that my group has done on topics around privacy. We have found these things useful and influential in the way how we, in the research group at Google, think about privacy. So some of the findings I'm going to present to you are behavioral, some are more attitudinal. Come on in, sorry. Lots of space. Some of the user quotes may seem inconsistent with each other and even irrational, but very often they pick very suboptimal strategies that people use if they want to protect their privacy, but they're all very human, and the human aspect is what I'll focus on. So, what will I focus on? I have three goals for what I want to do in this talk. So, I want you to think about why user research, even on topics like privacy, is important. I want you to sort of learn what users think privacy is about. And I want you to remember some of that through some of the stories from our research projects. Okay? But let me start with what I want to end with. Just in case if you need to leave early or get bored and you will run out. So if you don't remember anything else, then remember these 7 statements, which are sort of born out of the research by me and my colleagues and what we have conducted. So this list of hypotheses can sort of serve as an outline for my talk. Some of these statements may not even sound surprising to you, but I would say that's a good thing. So it means that different perspectives are actually coming together. And I tend to have different perspectives because I'm a social scientist, and I think you guys are on computer science departments, right? Mixture, even better. But I'm not a computer scientist, I'm a user researcher, and my background is, as Mauro said, in anthropology, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So in the coming 40 minutes or so, I will take a deeper look at these statements, and I would like to share with you some of the stories that users have told us, not only to give support to these hypotheses, but also to make them very concrete and place them in the real lives of their users. So here's my agenda for the talk. Now I'll talk a bit about what I do, why to do this. This doesn't need to go. So just give you a general idea of where we're going through. So let me start with something about me. Let me sum up to my perspective a little bit better. I don't come from big data, which is what in places like Google you often think everything you do is about big data. I come from what I would say deep data. I'm an anthropologist by training, and I've got trained in London and in Manchester. So do you know what anthropology is? So I normally define anthropology as the study of humankind, in particular the comparative study of human societies and cultures and their development. Isn't that where you go and live with the natives, like in the bush? Yes! So I didn't go and live in the bush necessarily, but I went and did my research in northern Finland. So when we do research with people, We hear from people, we work with people, and we do with people. So it's very intense when we interact with them, and we often work from the ground up when we do our theorizing as well. So we have lots of stories of real people to tell in our work. So I'm going to have less graphs and more talks. I have some graphs in my talk, but like, it's going to be other kind of bits and pieces. So my PhD dissertation focused, amongst other things, on imagination of identity and concepts of work. So I really kind of explored how people come to be who they are and how they kind of negotiate that in public. My connection to sort of the digital world where I've now ended up sort of came much later. I didn't really receive any training in computer science. In fact, this whole SPSS stuff and R, I'm like, what do I need this? I'm going to work with people. But then already my doctoral research in Finland, I was faced with technology and the way of how people were using that. So I worked with farmers who used remote banking long before the internet was even invented. So their nearest branches were 100 kilometers away. They needed to use different means to contact their bank branches. So the farmers were sort of stereotypically often known across most of the world as like being kind of conservative and slow. They were very fast at adopting new technologies. So I started becoming interested in this whole technology. How did this lead me to this? So the anthropology was already looking at people and their experiences and the user experience, and I've worked sort of for now almost 20 years in media technology, whatever you want to call it. So I worked very closely with designers, information architects, and of course software engineers. I worked amongst other things on things like accessibility, registration issues, patient record systems for the NHS in the UK, and just new product development. So I've been on both sides of the client consultancy divide a couple of times, been at Google for a long time with the intermittent break in between 16 and 17. I'll focus today on sort of the privacy work. I've worked on a bunch of other things. I now work not on privacy anymore. I work now on machine learning for office software, so like what happens in the workplace. But the user-facing privacy tools and the development, the thoughts around this is what I'm going to talk about here today. But that's enough about me. So, I want you to kind of think about why we should do user research with users on privacy in the first place. There's a bunch of reasons why maybe we shouldn't. They're untrained, often don't understand the technological framework, they're certainly not experts around privacy, and the data is quite noisy, because like people say very inconsistent things. Users in general, whatever you research, like they say like first they said this, and then 10 minutes later something different. So what can you actually learn from this? It's really hard. They change their minds, they're not objective. I don't like Facebook because whatever. So there's a good reason why we can say like, maybe we shouldn't. And then there's some good reasons of why we maybe should. It really helps product development to sort of align on different things that really matter to users. It really helps to redefine the boundaries, because amongst sort of the very fast technological advances that even I have seen in the 20 years I've worked in this space, really kind of need to be reassessed from where our kind of users sit. But it also makes things very concrete. It helps to implement what kind of controls or tools users really need and what they do with the technology advances that comes along for, and how to help people adopt these products that we build, the features, the UIs, so that they're actually being understood. But there's another reason, and this is you're not your user. So when you build stuff, very often we sort of build things for ourselves. It helps, research really helps us ground us and our colleagues. So our expert talk is checked. We're kind of, our metaphors that we use if you build in the working product development are different than the mental models are of the rest of the population. So unless you build tools for experts, then you need to kind of find a way to how to talk to the ordinary population. So think about it, a car engine. A carburetor in a car engine is for most people just part of the engine. Only for a specialist it'll be important to kind of know how a carburetor works and how it functions. So I think most of us are probably a few sigmas away from the norm. Computer science students, user researchers, all these kinds of people. We should really think about where we are and how we connect to this. So we need to do user research in order to make sure that doesn't happen. So in fact, in one of our projects, we wanted to look into the expert talk a bit more in depth. So the research community, the experts seem to agree, say that transparency control helps with people trusting digital services. So they ran a few services via a service platform, and that asked about sort of interest categories on the web, unbranded, nothing connected to any kind of particular brand. And what we found are two broad things. On the roughest level, the level there's two groups. So some people care about transparency and control, and some don't. Predictably, for those who don't care, more transparency and control didn't really matter much. It stayed pretty much the same on the grey line here. For the people who cared about transparency and control and wanted that, for them it made kind of the more transparency and control we gave them, it actually went up. So the implications really are that instead of maximizing perhaps control for everyone, maybe those services should provide assurance that the data that they're using is protected to users for those who don't care, and offer control and more detailed information to those who do care. So we presented that at CHI in 2014, so this is something you can read after. But what you see is just following the expert opinions would have had us miss that the non-care users don't want to necessarily see all those settings and everything in detail. They just want to be able to move on. And probably would have pissed them off with all this kind of detailed settings. Whereas for those who need it, we need to provide them. So we should do research with users. Okay? All convinced? Alright, good. Alright, let's go into a big deep dive for projects. So I want to talk about users and privacy here. So if the user researchers, the computer science students, the designers and developers are sort of like more than 3 sigmas different, we ought to constantly get data about our understandings and perceptions in order to compare them with the people who are actually redesigned for our users. So this was the context in which we started. So let me tell you what the issue was that we had. So what does it mean for our users? In fact, let me start with this illustration. This is now a relatively old cartoon, but I still think it's quite apt. So it shows to me in a very succinct form how privacy decisions are often taken by users. So, oh, someone poked me. And still don't get my Super Poke, I have to install Super Poke Extreme. Oh, to install Super Poke Extreme, you must allow access to some of your info. What? Display all internet activity, publish all my passwords on public. Minfeed, show all internet banking, display all medical records and list all my medications. That's a privacy outrage. Yeah, I'd really like to see that poke. Okay, install. And that's what happens quite often to users. So, privacy decisions by users are very often taken in context, not in an isolated situation when they deal with privacy only. So when people do things that seem to go against their own concern for their privacy, it doesn't mean that they don't care. It just means that they are not concerned. So that's really important, I think, to remember. Very often it's just not in a good position to make a rational, long-term decision about what happens because all they wanted to see is that Super Poke. So let me tell you a couple of stories about control. So some quotes from different things. This is about personalized ads. So what people kind of were concerned about, like, oh, I'm concerned that people could see my targeted ads when I log into my personal account at work. And from what he told us, there were some not so safe for work things in there. So, but he wanted to control to make sure that doesn't show up. We heard people tell us that they actually deleted their Facebook account because they felt they were found too easily. People in Europe, all over Europe, kind of were concerned that, like, if they have Facebook data, it'll kind of go to the US and then they have no control to ever kind of get it again, so they might as well give up. And we had sort of the tinfoil hat people who kind of really said, like, well, I'm using online banking and special computer just for online banking to make sure that any leakage is prevented. It's all this other internet stuff he does on a different computer. Very elaborate setup. Here's another thing piece of context to consider for what we did with this research. This was 2009. This was the original Google dashboard. I don't know if you guys have Google accounts. You can go to your account settings. It doesn't quite look like this anymore. I'll show you in a minute what it looks like. But when we launched this was the first time any one of the bigger services actually tried to bring all the data that is associated with a single account together in one place. So we had started to kind of go out and we wanted to sort of identify and understand users' understanding of privacy and how it relates to Google when we had launched this and how does this make any difference. we wanted to sort of figure out whether this happens. We launched it without being able to really go into the depths of that. So we then wanted to find ways how to enable users to feel more control of their privacy. So we built this, we thought it's a good start, how do we go forward? And of course, Google wanted to demonstrate that they're aware of and responsive to the user concerns. You can see this already happened in 2009, so it's been a while that they've been working at this. But we went on and kept improving that, so kind of worked on that. We wanted to kind of really make sure that we continue improving as we go forward. So users' concerns about data privacy are both powerful and real, but very often sort of kind of vague and informed by the media rather than first-hand experience. And that's one of the things we continue to hear is that, oh, I've heard someone else told me, someone did that, and rather than necessarily kind of their own experience. So after we did research around kind of how to launch this product, we sort of felt we still don't necessarily know what privacy is, but they generally kind of still felt that Google was okay. The fears that people have include things like burglary, child abduction, surveillance, unwittingly giving away personal information that may be used by unspecified third parties in some form. But they still kind of thought it's kind of okay to go forward. On the other hand, we kind of saw all the research and we proved it, we did usability testing in multiple countries. It was appreciated, it made people feel that they had more control about their privacy with other services, but we could still improve the usability and sort of the way how to find it. So it was leading the industry at the time, but that's kind of when they saw that. So other companies have put this together, we've kind of improved it. I think that's what it looks like now at the moment. So it's not, it's kind of underneath this section. So you can see really kind of things have been updated. It's not that something we just launched in that form, but as a way to bring that forward. Now we have a tool, but we felt we still don't necessarily know what privacy is for users. We were left with that central question: what does privacy mean for users that are neither sort of the lawyers nor the engineers? Because we know there's a legal debate about what privacy is, and then there's a sort of engineering debate about what privacy is. Like, how is it echoed and where is it stored and how does that go? But how do users define it, if at all? What do they care with regards to privacy and why? Disappeared. So, we started to figure out how could we do this. We were trying to figure out what method should we use in order to find out more about this. So we don't understand users' practices and their beliefs. We need to go beyond sort of just pure explanations and behavior. We wanted to understand things in context, including sort of offline analogs, setups, and we still, of course, being a business, we need to be pragmatic and fast, and we need to have some hypotheses we can test. And we wanted people also to see, obviously, interact with the tools as we moved it forward. So we came up with sort of 3 methods that we thought might be a good way to do so. So we wanted to do some focus groups, because we thought that it helps us to understand and correctly interpret the privacy vocabulary of our users. So that helps us kind of read the specific privacy-related issues, topics, and themes that are mentioned in different markets. Because sometimes the way of how people speak about it may not specifically bring up the term privacy, but it may actually kind of still relate to this. And I'll come back to it in a minute. We then thought, let's do a diary study, sort of really collect sort of like longer term experiences, the reactions to specific situations where privacy might be involved, so we can collect some of that data. And people wrote a diary about that. And then also to record some opinions, we asked them questions that they recorded in the diary about their attitudes to privacy related matters on the web. And then we did some field research. So we really went and look at the setups and arrangements that people had for handling their sensitive information. Where do they keep it? How do they keep it private and safe? See their reactions to the dashboard, and sort of discuss the needs and gaps in users' experiences with those bits and pieces. So we had 3 methods. We then thought, like, okay, we'll do 3 screeners for 3 subgroups of people. So the people who sort of the social networkers, the people who have lots of data already out there on the web. We had the people who were caretakers, who were responsible for other people's data, and people who we call the reflective people. People who sort of like, maybe I create a secondary account and then make a fake account of my Facebook profile. People who thought about like how to handle their data. So they took action in some form about what they wanted to do with it. Just in pure numbers to give you a sense of what this was, it was like we did some focus groups in 3 different countries, 3 per country, 6 to 10 participants each. We then did about 100 diaries in the 3 different countries, and then 34 in-home field visits. What I also did is I took my colleagues along, so it wouldn't be just me, the researcher, going out to these places, but I took my engineering colleagues, my project managers, I took some of our legal people, our PR people with me, just to have them really experience what it's like when people tell us about their stories. That worked quite well. 2 years later, they were still telling me, remember that guy? Like, you know, they were still remembering that. So, privacy for users means what? So from a user perspective, there are 5 things that are really important in how people understand privacy. The insights that I'm going to present are not Google specific. While we let the people who did have a Google account look at their dashboard, we also had people who didn't have a Google account and didn't use Google on a regular basis. So all of these points are sort of more generic in the way how they said. So they wanted to understand the basics of what happens with the data without having to read a manual. They were trying to outsource as much as they could to things that they didn't need to do with, like people were saying like, oh, I'll buy a Mac because then I don't have to worry about viruses. It was just like, it outsources that problem. People were saying, wanting to feel in control, feeling that they can actually do something when they feel they have a situation, so they think they can do something effective. They know where they can go when they actually need someone. Who can they ask? Is there a number they can ring? Is there an email they can write? Is there a friend they can turn to? And overall, just to really keeping their sensitive data safe and secure. So the metaphor that I used to explain it to my colleagues quite often is sort of the doors and your underwear metaphor. So sorry for the story, I couldn't think of a better one. But it's not really security or privacy that's at stake. Think about your underwear as like your sensitive data. You don't want this to be seen and you don't want it to be stolen. So you want a door. So your door is both your security, so it doesn't get stolen, so you can close it, but it's also privacy, so nobody can see it. From a user perspective, you don't care whether the door is security or privacy. You just want the door to be there, and you want to be able to control it. That's what people kind of care about. That kind of sense of, they look at what is at the bottom line for things. And they don't make the distinctions that the industry often makes of this is a privacy issue, this is a security issue. Users just want to make sure that they have control in the end and they understand what's going on. Alright, I'll tell you a little bit more about understanding basics. So again, sorry for no graphs, this is how good as I can draw. So often people sort of see the benefit of context in the services that they use, and they're willing to share some data. Like location can be a useful addition to maps. Perhaps it can tell you where you want to go. It knows already where you are. Perhaps increasingly so over the past few years. But if they feel they have no insight about how their data is handled, whether they're being coaxed into giving up more data than they feel like, then people react very negatively, and normally very absolutely. Trust is then being withdrawn on a whole-scale basis. You don't say like, I withdraw my trust from Google by 60%. You just like it's there or it's not there. So companies are not very transparent, and that's what makes them suspect. So there seems to be a lack of the transparency of what's going on. So one of the guys, do I have an example of this? Yeah, so like people felt like, oh, you know, the kind of meeting videos I like on YouTube, don't judge me by what's going on there. Or like I don't mind this if I give this as long as I know what it's used for. So this is people said to us like there's a trust element. I don't mind giving sensitive information to a company or an individual as long as I know what they want to use it for. This is this guy here. It is for when you lose track of it that it really becomes a problem. It's when they use it and they use it for their own purposes, and I know that you come from another side to them and they make these assumptions about me, they collect my data and they manipulate it. And then the transparency isn't clear and people kind of withdraw their trust. As an example, so this was the dashboard I already showed you. There's also the account activity, something you could look at what actually was going on. And you can see like when you get logged in. So this is information that we kind of make transparent and make it clear what actually is going on with the data. Same in the new version, I think it's been updated to material design so that the visuals look different. And I didn't grab a screenshot. But the point is you can actually look at what data is collected, what it's being used for. The technology is not understood. Another thing that people kind of, when they use technology online, it's not really understood how it works. So frequently the concern is about viruses and other malware that was voiced as an expression of concern. It's really kind of what they don't understand what's going on. So they don't know how to protect themselves against it, and it might, and what might impact the technology of theirs that they don't fully understand. So importantly, however, they don't really care. So it's like with your car. Do you really want to know how it works and what happens when you really the clutch? And most of the time, you just want to use it. That's the same thing for the internet in most cases as well. They just want to use it. They somehow expect that the experts, the safety experts in the car industry, or the safety experts who build these tools, will ensure that you can safely use your internet or your drive or your car, whatever the case may be. So people also rely on their expert friends to guide them what they should be doing, or they fly blind and learn as they go. So it's literally, I don't know how this happens, a friend of mine set this up for me. Or, how does the web really know it's me? I just don't understand. It's very difficult for people to build those mental models. So, same thing, the safety center, which is part of the new version of the dashboard, is specifically kind of branching those bits out for families and for individuals, to really give more information of where there's resources, to kind of really try to make that clearer how things work. Alright, people want to outsource these admin tasks. That's another thing they really would like to do. So, people draw different boundaries than we might be doing when we model our things. Like classically, you have this central kind of me, my family, and it goes out, but in fact, actually, that's not necessarily how your social circles look like. So, I think, yes, we had a user who shared all the other all the data with the other primary user of the computer. They were not married; they were just living together. They were very happy to share stuff. That's one way of doing things, but it's maybe not necessarily the way how this happens. Whereas other people, my husband and my daughter know the PIN number of my credit card, so they were sharing financial stuff. So people have very different models in the way of how their social circles are organized, and people are not really sure how their online and offline selves and identities connect to each other. So we shouldn't assume that this is the model that everyone works from. People have very different ways of dealing with it. So they now deprecated in Google+, try to kind of deal with this through kind of circles. But I think more interestingly is probably the inactive account managers, where you can sort of set up stuff. What happens, like, should you abandon your Google account for whatever reason, because you're ill, or you die, or because you just don't want to use it, where you can actually set up data in a form that it can be inherited by somebody else. So again, this is trying to make that more outsourced, so you can set this up before. Alright, people want to feel in control. People are often sort of quite aware that there's something seemingly peripheral data about them that could still be revealing sort of the digital footprint. So sometimes this becomes more, some data will become more significant if you can make a connection between the piece of data and other information about that person. So this was a teacher we interviewed in the US. They Googled her, and I just don't want to know them about my private life. Some employees might be a voice coach and judge you. So you were kind of afraid of this. Okay. So just like a way of monitoring of what's going on. As examples, I wanted to show you, so this is the me on the web. This is the whole pre-GDPR kind of discussion about, like, you can figure out what's going on, the right to be forgotten, and you can sort of figure out what's going on with your profile. Alright, people want to know where to turn to. They often look, what we found, to the big technology firms as a way to help them of where to go when they have issues, like the Apples, the Amazon, the Googles, etc. And so that should be a place where you could provide them with more advice, helps, and tips. But very often they just don't know where to start. And that's when they're told, like, get a Mac, or I have 3 email addresses, and maybe that's the way of how you can handle it. Very often they rely on their techie friends for guidance, but they assume that it's employees who should know more what would be useful to them, so they ask people who might work there. So very often approach me as an anthropologist to deal with some technical issues. If there's, no. But they would kind of expect that people who work for these companies know these things in detail and can really help them with giving them accurate advice of what would be the best thing, whether it be technical or whether that be strategic. But very often they cannot assess whether the self-taught strategies that they've adopted are in any form effective. So one participant told us of how his strategies on being online suddenly made him feel exposed by the offline steps he was taking. So he was telling us, I've got this guy who comes to my house and he cleans up my cookies and my spyware and he helps me with my security. But they did all these things on my computer and I can't really tell what he's doing on my computer. He takes a long time, so it makes me suspicious. Now I hesitate to call him again. I need to ask him to do stuff I don't know how to do it myself. But I kind of feel funny, because how do I know I can trust him? So his point was really like, well, I don't necessarily trust the big companies, but I kind of realized I trust now someone who I don't have any more means to kind of whether or not to put my trust into. Yeah, more advice. What do I do about privacy? And then some people have their trusted friends like, well, if there's something happens on Facebook, they just post it and then I change it. Sorry, what's that? Yeah, the Good to Know campaign, staying safe. And safety center again. That's it. Keep it safe. While security is a big theme everywhere we went, it wasn't often clear to users how to ensure that. So many users feel really quite resigned or powerless about achieving adequate levels of safety for themselves. So withdrawal or non-engagement in the first place is often a strategy that they followed. So others sort of follow elaborate strategies with the different computers, deleting their internet history every time they close their browser, etc., etc. More often, however, they do things that they perceive to understand as being risky, but they essentially just hope that nothing happens. So yeah, and in fact that's the only way to really do it is not to go online. And they know that's not a choice, so then they do things that they think is risky. And the internet is this floating thing, and no one has any control over that. That's a classic call. Alright. Two-factor verification is a way to help you give you more security. It's something that is kind of opted in very much. It's constantly being updated. In many places you now have the little security tab keys you can use to increase it even further so that you are present or you get something sent to your mobile. Also there's a way of like looking in when and how you signed in. So this is you can look up when you signed into your account. And suddenly in between there appears something to be from Nigeria, maybe that wasn't you. Maybe you should change your password. Alright, so this is about people are worried about each other more than the companies. It's something that kind of concerns about roommates, family members, work colleagues, but also about the faceless hackers and burglars who might get access to your computer. People are also aware that they might be intruding on others, even if it's not intentionally, and then they expect that this might happen to them. So this is an example we had in London. I don't know if I've got the example here. But this was a lady who talked to her cousin, and her cousin was very excited to tell her on the phone about the new winter garden they just built. And it's like, yeah, I know, I've seen the pictures on Facebook. And it wasn't really public yet, but she had already seen it. So it just felt like she really was privy to something that she might have not been otherwise. The other example I wanted to say, which really stuck with me, is from some guy in London who was telling us about being interested and then feeling he was getting himself into a stalking position when he didn't really intend to, and he felt really uncomfortable. So he said, I get this link from Dave, my mate, down from the pub, and he sends me some pictures. And so I look at the pictures, and then I see a friend of his, an acquaintance of mine, who's with this cute bird. So I look up her profile on Facebook. And before I know it, I find myself clicking away through her pictures, and then through those from her last holiday. And then I realize, what am I doing? What am I doing? It's 3 AM, and I shouldn't be doing this. Oh well, just one more picture. And that kind of ease by which people kind of felt they might intrude upon others, even unintentionally, is something that they expect might happen to them as well. So extra login, you can set up different profiles that helps you to do that more, and also. Oh, is there another one? you can it also sends you a message if you log into a new location with a new device. It will tell you. I thought I had a screenshot for this. Maybe not. I didn't. Anyway, so how do people think about that privacy? It's about keeping their personal sensitive data safe, and I think that's kind of the main point we found from these things. So the practical focus is to prevent theft and fraud, to control and manage your reputation, and to check is a checkpoint for the changing social relationships you go under. And that's really what they care about, rather than privacy in a specific technical form. So let's look at the takeaways that I started with. Did I cover some of them? I think the first two, I've sort of dealt with. Okay. In fact, I probably alluded to some of the other ones through some of these points I make here, but I want to give you some more of these hypotheses in more detail. Let me start with context and the sensitivity of data. So, context matters. We did a study, multiple methods, qualitative interviews, session with mocks, 4 countries, 49 interviews, thousands of survey responses, 100 stories. We wanted to sort of understand whether there are different requirements for privacy when a person, within a person, and how that plays out in their online lives. So I won't go into the details of all of this, but I want to focus on 2 things here that relate to circumstance and context. So, this is a bad graphic. Alright, so what they really wanted to do is to minimize the overhead of when maintaining their different identities, and this really kind of means how they engage with others online. So what is very often what they find is you share things with one person only rather than with a generic account. So it's not broadcasting, it's very much shallow casting. That's how people keep in touch with certain people. And the second area is that you have separate areas of life that you don't want to mix. So the hipster who moves out of California to be a teacher in Colorado doesn't want her students to find the hipster pictures from Burning Man, etc., etc. Same for the sensitivity of data. And one of the things that, of course, a lot is asked is, can we do a stack ranking of the most sensitive data items that are out there? And we can discuss with the European Union as GDPR is being drawn up. There's some things that are kind of already protected. How do we handle this? So we kind of wanted to see, like, what is the sensitive stuff? And we wanted to kind of see whether we could inform that public debate about what these items are. Like already in the pre-GDPR kind of debate, stuff like your ethnicity, your race, your religion, union membership are already protected. But we wanted to kind of see, like, is that what users care about here? So we wanted to find out more whether you could start rank this. We did a large-scale survey. We wanted to do this quantitatively. We wanted to have people rank very concrete data items from home address to browsing history in 3 different kind of online activities, whether this is about online shopping, social networking, and sort of information search. And we wanted to see whether we could stack things. And lo and behold, we found out that that's actually not linear. So these kind of things vary quite differently. So you can have a generic sense from less to more, but depending on scenarios, things behave really quite differently. So some data items are always sensitive, and some of the data items is really quite varied. You can see some of the things here. They're really quite different. So what we kind of came away is that sensitivity of personal data is rarely fixed. So some of the items are more sensitive, like you have the logins, the browsing history, the purchase history, but many of the other ones that you can't really change much about, they were not so sensitive for them. It depends on the context. It's what you saw from the different ones here. So it's driven by the data item and by the scenario. People understand if you want to do online shopping, you want to get stuff delivered, you probably have to give them an address. So there's a balance you want to pick up here. But we also really saw that data sensitivity really varies significantly according to the data category type and the context. So the drivers that we looked at, most concerning drivers were identity theft and financial loss. Things that we have very clear harm. But users also kind of differentiate very actively between actively collected and passively collected data. If you ask me, what's your name, what's your address, I give it to you. It's a different thing than if it feels it's being read in the background. So what we found is, like, there's three strategies that can help you reduce that. And that is really to increase the trust by giving people that kind of control that we talked about earlier, showing them how it works through more transparency, and make it very clear what the benefits are for them so they can make an informed choice. Next, I'd like to talk to you about the people who you may do research with, apart maybe from your fellow students if you do some research. So we thought we need to look at how different panels react. So very often if you do survey research, like some of the big panels, do they have any biases? Are they all the same? Can you use that? So researchers increasingly utilize those tools to gather these insights and I did an MTurk study. Well, is MTurk actually a representative population that we could look at? So we did a project where we actually wanted to figure out whether they're comparable, whether some of them are over or underrepresenting certain privacy dimensions. So we presented this at SUPS, and we came up with that there are. It's very pixelated. Sorry for that. That these are quite different in the way of how these panels react to privacy. So privacy is considered the more tech-savvy users in some of the panels and underrepresented for the privacy concerns. But we're also going to learn that hypothetical concerns don't differ much. So you can see where they kind of align on the same way. For illustration of one of the findings on this chart, I picked two of the dimensions that we had plotted privacy concerns on the horizontal axis and on the internet frequency use on the y-axis. So we used a classical Wallace test to identify the groups that are statistically different, which is indicated by the circles. And this shows that this is the one that Google built, Google Consumer Surveys, which is one of the things we wanted to feed back to our colleagues. They're sort of like okay in the middle, the representation is doing all right. But some of the other ones you might want to really look. So MTurk sits on a broad range. So I want to come to the last 2 points I want to make. One is about culture, and one is about changes to user perceptions over time. So I couldn't resist sneaking a swish picture into you, sorry. But more seriously, as a social culture anthropologist, I'm often asked by my industry colleagues, including our lawyers, all sorts of questions about culture. And I've written about this about the different conceptualizations of culture in different settings in a different book called The Ethnography of the Corporate Account. If you're curious, then find it. But you can Google me as the search engine. But anyway, funnily enough, when people ask me about the cultural differences for privacy, I'm normally the first one who wants to debunk the idea that different countries, different cultures are substantially different for privacy. I've outlined above how users are very outcome focused, like not about the privacy or security, just want to feel that they have control over the things they want to do. But that's something that transcends cultures and really unites them. So that outcome focus is true across the different countries that we looked at. We did see some differences in the different countries. However, I believe that they're due to the way how things are being talked about, rather than any ingrained cultural difference. So, in fact, so we did the research predominantly, obviously, still in very Western countries like Germany, UK, and the US, even though in the US we went to the West Coast and to the East Coast and to very non-techy areas to kind of get a different perspective. There's a professor in India who has done a big study on Indian perspectives on privacy in a survey style, different methodology, but he came up with very similar findings. So I feel like it's really connected as well. What I want to talk about here is what we did see as differences. So in Germany we saw very often that people as first reaction was like, I want to withdraw if I'm not sure that I can use this. And that people were very slow to build their trust. But we heard this in all other countries too, but we heard it more so in that place. Same in the UK, where more of these stories I've told you about the guy who was looking at the other person's Facebook pictures. So there were more stories of where they were reflecting upon themselves and how certain data sharing might make relationships very awkward. So in the UK we had a story from someone who suddenly friended all sorts of members of the family, and they couldn't figure out who the strange person was, and then they kind of dug a bit deeper, and then they found out that was the lover of their father. So that was very awkward. In Germany I had a situation where I was at the person's house for an interview, and she realized that a calendar was set up with her, that her ex-boyfriend had set up, was still in use, and she was still using that, so she was sharing all the data with her ex-boyfriend. And that obviously concerned us. So like these things kind of first stuff that we did hear about, they happen across all of it, but this is what we happen more. We heard in the US a lot of stuff about like fraud has happened to me, and I had bad experiences, credit card fraud, and I've been scammed and hacked. But we heard the same from the UK, and to the extent where it was really very much like, oh, they scammed my credit card for £1,999, because from £2,000 onwards, that's when the police gets involved. So they knew exactly what they were doing, in order to kind of get away. So it's a misdemeanor, and I couldn't bring it to the police. So important to remember for all these things is they're not extreme or exclusive findings, but these themes seem to be louder or stronger within the respective research setting. But we also heard all of these stories in other places. But so maybe these were things if you could say, but it's the way of how you talk about stuff. In Germany, we heard much more people saying, "Oh, I've seen this on Spiegel TV, I've seen this on the newspaper." They were referring to media as a way to kind of justify their opinions. Whereas in the UK, people were just like, "Oh, I just know about this," even when they clearly had seen it somewhere else. So it's just a way of how you talk about stuff. Finally, I would like to talk about some of the last privacy research I did at Google before I moved on to other things. We haven't actually published this. All the other stuff is published. If you Google it, you'll find some of these things. But I can share some of the high-level tendencies. And I think they're getting more in the qualitative line of work rather than the service stuff I just talked about before. So this is when 3 years after we did that research I talked to you about in depth before, when we went to these places and these in-home visits, we went back to the very same people 3 years later. We first had to kind of check, can we do this from an ethical perspective? Is this alright? Because we had planned this to be a single study, and then we thought, like, could we look at this across time? So we kind of went through the ethical kind of considerations. Yes, it's okay to contact them. And we had about 25 of the 34 people who we'd spent time with on a significant basis all across these 3 countries to go back and talk to them again. So we found lots of things that confirmed sort of stuff from the previous projects, but we also saw some other things. So here's what we kind of saw here. So one of the things that really impressed me was like how life stage and device changes drive behavioral change. So one of the things that you often say, oh, but people just never look out, so therefore they don't care. Well, the fact was that people had moved from smartphones to from legacy phones to smartphones, and they still kept these things, but they never locked their screen. The fact that they didn't lock their screens didn't mean they didn't care, but they just took some of their behaviors along with them. Life stages really mattered. We had a young mother who had a 2-year-old baby at the time and was expecting another in the first round. Newly married, kind of. I have my own device. My husband has her own. If his computer breaks, I'm not going to give him my password. 3 years later, their 2-year-old was 5 years old. He was using the computer as much. In fact, she had swapped from a computer to a tablet. Her son was using the tablet all the time. Her data management had become very different. Also, their relationship was now 3 years older. In fact, all the technology kind of device management was now run by the husband. And she was fine with it, where she didn't feel so fine at the beginning. So life stages change the way of how you behave these things. Moving out of the parental home might make things very different. On the other hand, we saw that their key aspects for their attitudes actually remained the same. So the people who talked to us 3 years previously about exposure that they might have on the internet still talked about that. People who were very concerned about ads still talked about ads. And the people who were really concerned about maybe being tracked was something that they were still concerned about. So they may take their strategies across with them through different technological devices and services, but they may not actually be appropriate anymore. So being logged in constantly on your Facebook and your online banking on your smartphone when you don't use a lock screen may just be not a good strategy to be. I'll move through that. Yes, what we saw is that these identities are very faceted and sometimes need separation more, and sometimes want to bring them together. So, computer for work, Mac tablet for play, private serving versus recorded web history, or like I want a single iTunes family account for the whole family because that makes it easier to manage the things we purchase, including the children. So we saw this in general, kind of we saw this confirmed, including that there were very little country differences. So, some of these things may not completely sound clear, but I hope that now that I've given a little more context, maybe this makes more sense. So, let me repeat for the last point. That's something we should still be cautious for. We're at the beginning of the analysis and digging into it deeper when we compare this with other research. If you look at research in an academic world, like the theory of reasoned action, that seems related, but we need to really dig deeper here. What I hope to demonstrate in this talk, however, is that we need to keep evaluating our work. We can support these findings with deep data. We need to keep looking at it on a regular basis. Sometimes qualitative data actually works better to give you some understandings about the why than the big data. Having having worked with people in their real homes and in their real settings, in their real accounts, is kind of what brought us a lot of that stuff. What it shows is that we need to understand the mental models and how they shift that users bring to the table rather than the people who build these tools and the context in which they act. And then we can assess sort of the services and the usability and the usefulness of them. So with these findings, I close. And we can open for questions. Questions? Yes.
I have one question regarding the normal distribution. Actually, I mean, what you show is that average doesn't exist, but how do we actually deal with that or like, are there better ways to actually also conduct studies, knowing that we have different groups and different, let's say, characteristics of populations that may somehow define or drive our designs in a way, so that we have to somehow look at perhaps, I don't know, 3 different designs for the 3 different user groups is probably more the way to go than somehow thinking about an average. So this is perhaps
yeah, so I think very often development happens in the 80-20 rule. If you solve for 80%, the rest of the 20 sort of like either have to adapt or just follow on. I think that's a nice starting point, but I guess if you want to build truly good services, there are probably special cases that you need to look at. So I think very often you need special, be very clear before you start the project, what's the group that you're looking for, that you're targeting. So Google runs into this problem all the time. We design for everyone, right? So it should be usable by everyone, but still there's different needs in the way how that happens.
But for privacy, would you recommend, I don't know, some grouping or some, let's say, calculations that you would address with?
I think the people who are, which we call the reflective people, were very different. These were people who wanted to go deeper, wanted to understand stuff, they wanted to see things, they wanted to have more explanations. It's just in people's characters. My mom needs to understand how the X and the Y's go in the code. My dad just uses it and just goes through the internet as he does. So I think the need for transparency and understanding is different for different people. For the people who I call the reflective users, who had thought about, like, how do I handle this, what do I do with it, where do I do this, they probably need more information. But giving it to everyone may probably overwhelm others. So finding the right kind of level to understand that may really make a difference in the way how you can help people move forward. Yeah.
Well, you said at the beginning that one interest of studying how user understand privacy is useful for designing aspects. So, and you showing during the answers of Google regarding different points and so on. So, can you tell us, if you take the list of the takeaways, which one have influenced more the designs of, which findings have influenced strongly, let's say for the Google answers of this?
I think they all have fed into this. I mean, that's something, when I started at Google, there was a lot of debate amongst designers that we need to build different tools for Germany and for Russia. And much of that is like, well, actually what people want in the end is very much the same. The way how you talk about it is difficult. And that meant we needed to talk to our PR colleagues at times to say, like, well, sometimes the way of how you communicate stuff is different in different languages. And literally from the translation piece, sometimes a word in English is a verb, and in German it's a noun. So you can't explain things in exactly the same way. So be attentive to whether it is, but it's not that therefore there's innate differences in what they want to achieve. What people want to achieve is fairly similar. We've seen that very straightforward. Of course, study populations as a way to personalize for different people. It can be build models that help address specific populations and their needs better. So there's a lot of effort for protecting journalists, people in countries with authoritarian regimes, so that they don't get found out by the way of how the trails they might leave. This is something that we've seen very strongly. So like this assumption, when we kind of were in the discussions about what happens with GDPR, I think we were much better prepared for some of the regulations that came, because we understood that they're not things that are the same all the time. You need to be attentive to a user's context in the way that happens. And that kind of obviously relates to this very directly. So I think much of the redesigns we've done for the tools that we've built are on the let's help you kind of make some of those decisions. as a privacy person, I very often get like, oh, we could have done more, not a checkbox on here. But these are the discussions you have to have. I mean, I think it's important to bring that data because that's what users really told us. And I must say, having a good data point at Google always means something. So people will sit up and listen to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. So there's this European legislation for data protection. Do you think it takes into account users' concern that you maybe saw through your study, or do you think it goes too far, not far enough?
The GDPR?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a legal specialist, so I can't really say that. What I found in general is that people comes back to the point of, I'd like to outsource this, and it's like, well, now my government will protect me. Now it's not my problem anymore. And then I can just say like, well, but it didn't. So that makes it nice, and I think people appreciate that. And I do think it reflects many of the concerns that are there. But as so often with any legal text to a layman, it's very difficult to understand it. And to sort of try to see what this means for you as an average normal user is very difficult. So one of the things, we did do research, for example, on the privacy policy page, where, in fact, our lawyers came to us like, can we bring some examples of how we use that data? Can we illustrate some of the points that are being made so that we can translate some of the legal speak into something that makes more sense? And I think there's a lot of things that people understand by doing, but I think there's also a lot of stuff that we can do by illustration and better onboarding. And I've seen too many explanations of any normal products in the technology space that are written by a non-native English speaker in a form that you really not sure you understand of what the explanation actually is supposed to mean. I think that's something that the companies who build these things can do better in general. Yeah.
So I'm astonished you say culture doesn't matter so much. Because we have, typically between the US, Europe and China, we have big differences in legal framework. And how do you explain this difference between the legal framework and you say culture doesn't matter so much?
Yeah. So I always ask this often, like, what's the difference? Like, so, well, the legal system is not the culture. So I mean, they all grow out of historical specific context. And there are differences in there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that therefore there are differences in the way the law handles it differently. That's very clear. But what people want may be very similar. So I think that's the difference in this respect. So you can say, of course, the law is part of the culture, but it doesn't mean that people still want the output that is important to them. That's the key piece. Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I really liked how you approached the whole topic. Now, one question I have is perhaps goes a little bit beyond, or certainly goes a little bit beyond the presentation. Now, there were, of course, certain scandals which were very closely related to some companies, so Facebook, for instance, let's say, right? Have you at Google seen some spillovers of these scandals? And if so, do you proactively deal with that, or do you try to just or is there anything at all that you're changing when you see how not direct competitors, but let's say the companies in the broader tech field deal or have dealt with user data? Is there something specific that you do at Google?
I think in general, if you're in that playing field, your reputation is affected by what your competitors do. There's not much you can do. So take the G+ as an example. Like, the social networks had a fairly low reputation anywhere. We would have, no matter what would happen, the ratings for that would always be influenced by what happens in other social networks. So I think that's across the field. And again, if you look at it from the outside, let's go back to the car industry. Like, whether if it's a big diesel scandal, it hurts everyone in this space. Doesn't matter whether it's a specific company. So I think you see that happening on a regular basis. There's not that much you can do. You can't control leaks or problems in other companies. It's bad enough if they happen in ours. So we would like to kind of make those as minimal as possible. So I think you can be prepared. I think you can have a good story. I think having an approach and being able to explain this in a form that the layman understands really helps. So having that story straight is, I think, important. And I think that therefore having good, reliable products that work the way how you say they should work makes that basis. But I think you need to be able to explain in a form that is understandable by the ordinary user. And that's very difficult because much of that technology is now very, very complicated.
Well, perhaps my last question. Do you have a sense of, from a quantitative perspective, of how many reflective users are out there?
No, that is the classic Western model of like the three types, and there's one of the privacy concerned people, which is relatively small. We haven't been able to kind of size it. Like, in fact, in our research, I specifically did not want to have exclusive groups of the caretakers and the reflective. They may have been over. Some of the people could have fit into several categories, because I think life is not that exclusive. So I think you need to include this into those spaces. But these were clearly groups that seemed to be important to people. People acted very differently if they were responsible for other people's data. There was a very different sense of like if you put your data at risk, but if you put your child's picture online or your friend's children or something like that, people acted very differently. So we don't have a sizing for that. Some of our colleagues can try to look at some of this, but it's actually very difficult to find something like that reliable. No, that was one question.
Just a question. Customers now are less concerned with the metadata that big companies are gathering. Do you think that in the future it will become sensitive data?
I think many people are aware of the sense of the metadata, they just don't know how to describe or understand about it. So that's when people talk of the digital footprint or the trails you leave, and they can't quite grasp it. So what they experience at times is when it happens to them. So we had a participant who had a very long surname, and therefore couldn't use it for various things. So he had to use a different name in order to order something online. And then he would get spam mail on the regular mail with that nickname, which he used only for the service. Look, they've sold my data. So people experience that, and they understand there's this leakage in some form in the way that happens, and they try to protect themselves against it, but they very often don't understand what that is or how they could control it better. Or also what the benefits would be. So, and I think that's where transparency comes in, that you kind of explain to people, this is why this might be useful, then you should have a choice in the way how you use that. So it's useful, I think that's one example. If I'm looking for a florist in Lausanne, and I'm in Lausanne, it makes probably sense that it knows that I'm here, because if it now gives me search results offers from Adelaide in Australia and New York, it probably doesn't help me very much. So, but you need to make clear of where that benefit is so you understand how that works. And people tend to understand this and value this, and they're ready to make those choices. What they feel less comfortable with is when it seems to be sort of implicit or sort of like secondary data, or the data is used for other purposes. So then they want explicit consent about that.
Thank you.
All right, please help me thank the speaker once again.